Hello POSim viewers, this is Roscoe1337 and today I am providing a narration for the battle between POSim director Eternal and HyperVortex. So as you can see, Eternal is leading Ninetales and HyperVortex is leading with Hydreigon. He does go for the Dark Pulse first turn and does flinch this Ninetales. Now on this turn here, Eternal is going to go for the Protect, which is starting to really seem like a signature move for Eternal because in most of his battles he does seem to use the move Protect at least 5 times. Now Hydreigon does Dark Pulse again. Now, Eternal is going to switch out here and go into his Porygon 2, which is more than likely an Eviolite set because that is the best Porygon 2 set and it can really take some hits. As you can see, this stab Dark Pulse only does 19%. So it's definitely obvious that this is an expert belted Hydreigon because it is able to switch moves and there is no Life Orb recoil. And most Hydreigon sets are not leftovers. So now Eternal is going to paralyze this Hydreigon just to cripple a little bit, so it's not as big of a threat as it would usually be because Hydreigon does have some pretty decent speed. So now Hyper Vortex does go into his Deoxys speed, more than likely to lay up the Stealth Rock because Stealth Rocks are always important, and he does go just for that. Now Eternal is going to go for the Thunder Wave just in case this is one of those Stealth Rock sets that are also offensive with Life Orb. So he really did cripple that Deoxys there. Now it's not as much of a threat as Deoxys speed would usually be. Now Hyper Vortex does go into his Scizor on this turn. Eternal Thunderbolts it, and now Scizor does go for a superpower, and it does do a nice amount of damage, but Porygon 2 is able to take that very well because of the Eviolite, and now Eternal is able to paralyze that Scizor, who is at -1 attack, and go for a recover to the nice amount of HP. Now Hyper Vortex goes for a Swords Dance here, and he has a Scizor sitting at +1 attack, -1 defense, and now Eternal goes into his Ninetales, and he does get hit by the Stealth Rocks, and it's pretty much his death fodder because Hyper Vortex does not have a weather inducer such as Hippowdon, Ninetales, Politoed, or Tyranitar. So Ninetales have a really good death fodder there against that Scizor superpower. So now Eternal's going to go into his Donphan on this turn because this Scizor can't do a whole lot to it at no boosted attack, and it is -2 defense. So Eternal is going to get a rapid spin off right here as Hyper Vortex does go into his Mew on this turn. Now there are no Stealth Rocks on the field. Now Eternal is going to switch out because most Mews are the Taunt Will-O-Wisp set, but as we come to find out, Hyper Vortex's Mew is a Nasty Plot set, which is very rare, but I think it's a very unique set to use and should be used a little more often because it is a little overlooked. Now Eternal does go for the Quiver Dance on his Volcarona here, not fearing much of anything from this Mew, but it goes for a Side Shock, and Volcarona take that exceptionally well because I'm pretty sure Eternal is running a more defensive set on his Volcarona. If I remember correctly, it was Bold Natured. Now, Hyper Vortex is going to switch out of there because that Bug Buzz at +1 will do a lot of damage, possibly kill it, and Hyper Vortex goes into Dragonite, who can take pretty much any hit exceptionally well from Volcarona, barring HP Rock or HP Grass. I mean HP Ice, excuse me. Now, Hyper Vortex goes for an extreme speed just to outspeed that Volcarona, just in case it does have one of those hidden powers that Dragonite does fear. Eternal predicts that quite nicely and goes into his Donphan, which takes absolutely nothing from that extreme speed. Now, Eternal is going to go for the Stellar Rocks just so that Dragonite can't switch in as much as it would like to. Now, Hyper Vortex goes into his Mew and does set up a nasty plot on this turn. And Eternal's Donphan just goes for an Earthquake, which does a nice chunk of damage, does 47%. But Eternal's definitely not going to want to stay in on this +2 Mew because Donphan can be used for later. And Eternal does go into his Dugtrio to take the Giga Drain because Dugtrio won't be serving a whole lot in this battle because Dugtrio is usually used to take out things such as Tyranitars and Heatrans, which Hyper Vortex has neither of those. Now, Eternal does go back into his Volcarona who can switch in safely because there are no Stealth Rocks in play. And Eternal is going to go for a Bug Buzz, and that's going to do a really big chunk of damage. But this Mew will be able to live and take out that Volcarona with a Side Shock. So we got a +2 Mew on the field, and Eternal is going to send out his Venusaur, which is able to outspeed this Mew because Sun is up, and Venusaur's ability Chlorophyll does double its speed. So this Venusaur is very, very fast. Now, since this Deoxys speed is paralyzed, but I do think that I'm pretty sure Venusaur always does outspeed even in sunlight unless Deoxys speed is like scarfed. So Eternal switches out anyway just because he may not be able to O-code that Deoxys. So he does the safe play and goes into his Porygon 2 to take that Psycho Boost, which only does 25%. So that Porygon 2 took that really well. Now Eternal's going to go into his Donphan on this turn, pretty much probably more than likely scouting for a superpower or predicting a Stealth Rock, because Eternal does know that since this Deoxys is at -2, it can't do a whole lot to Donphan, so Eternal is able to get off a Rapid Spin safely, as this Deoxys does go for a Psycho Boost, and it does 37%, which is a pretty decent chunk for something that's at -2, but then again, Donphan does not usually invest in the special defensive areas, so Eternal is going to fire off an Earthquake on that Deoxys speed, and he's going to take it out. So Eternal's Volcarona is safe to switch in as it pleases because the Stealth Rocker is dead and Eternal was able to Rapid Spin those hazards away. Now, HyperVortex goes into his Hydreigon and Eternal's going to go into Porygon 2 as we seen earlier can take any hit from this Hydreigon as that Flamethrower only does 21%. So on this turn here, HyperVortex is going to switch out, predicting Eternal to go for a recover as Eternal will do here to get his HP back. So this Porygon 2 is a really big problem for HyperVortex's team. So Eternal realizes that, and he's going to switch out into his Donphan because Scizor can't really do a whole lot to this Donphan. And HyperVortex does go for the +2, gets the Swords Dance up, and is now sitting at +2. So he's going to go for the Bullet Punch on this turn. And Eternal is going to fire off an Earthquake, which does 54%, and leaves Scizor at 8%. So an Ice Shard will definitely be able to take out this Scizor because since Scizor is paralyzed, the Bullet Punch Scizor will not outspeed with its priority move because Donphan is using a priority move. So HyperVortex goes into his Terrakion on this turn, and it's just gonna go for the close combat because since it's not Air Balloon, it can't dodge an Earthquake. So HyperVortex has to go for the safe play and just close combat. Excuse me. Now, Eternal's going to go into his Venusaur because even if this Terrakion is Scarf, which does outspeed, it's locked into close combat either way. So Venusaur is the safe switch no matter the situation at hand. Now, Eternal is going to go for a growth. So now this Venusaur is sitting at +2 special attack and +2 attack. So Sludge Bomb will definitely take out that Hydreigon, and Venusaur will obviously outspeed because of Chlorophyll, and the Hydreigon is paralyzed. So now HyperVortex does go into his Dragonite, and a Sludge Bomb will be able to take out that Dragonite as well. So this is pretty much a Venusaur sweep here because Terrakion will be taken out by an attack on this next turn, and that attack does happen to be a Energy Ball. So that was a good game, well played on both ends, worthless crit as you can see. Um, Shout outs to the editors because they do a really good job editing these videos. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out. Check me out. Peace.